As you can see, I have an accent. Because she had a Greek friend.
Japanese. My mom's Japanese. My father's Jewish. Speaking of lost in translation, the name's actually Asa. I don't mean to. It's Hebrew, actually, not Japanese. My mom's Japanese and my father's Jewish, and I sort of got a weird mixture of English mixed with a sort of Yiddish sensibility from my father's side, mixed with my Japanese from my mother's side. And one of the stories my dad always likes to tell is when I was a little kid growing up in Kyoto, which, if you don't know, was the old capital of Japan. And it's much more traditional. There's old temples. You go up into the mountains, and there's shrines and old stone statues and these beautiful winding paths and old buildings. And it's much more traditional and conservative in some ways. And one day we were out walking, and my dad teaches me all these Yiddish words like finagle and schnorrer, and so we're kind of Yiddish exclamations too. So I was learning both, and my Japanese has declined while I've been in America. But when I was very young, maybe 4 years old, and we're out walking, and this Japanese woman comes in. She's wearing a kimono, which is traditional dress that a lot of Japanese people still wear to traditional events, and it's like this beautiful flower pattern dress with the sash and her hair done up in a bun and tied in the back, and she's just walking. And if you know a kimono, it's very tight, so you're sort of walking like this, and like someone's grabbing your feet and you're just sort of trying to balance. And she's walking down the street, and I mean, just run up, and with the 4-year-old's eagerness and the 4-year-old's complete lack of any inhibition whatsoever, and run up and go, "Oy vey!" and and just this look of shock and utter terror, and just like she could have seen a ghost, some kind of kami, some Japanese spirit. She didn't know what this demon was yelling at her, but she was just complete shock. And my dad managed to run up while not falling down from laughing and salvage the situation. It's funnier if you understand how strict Japanese society is, and the complete the importance of keeping a stiff upper lip. It's a lot like England in that way. It's an island country just off the mainland, and they value that sort of like reserve, never showing your true emotions, and that kind of thing can also lead to language complications. So when I was in Japan, I spent time, at the beginning of the year, I just got back, let me know, by the way, there you go, from Japan at the beginning of the year in January, from a 7-month stay I had, and 4 months of that is spent in Yokohama, and I would used to commute into Tokyo to study and to spend time in the city. And after a while, I really needed to find English people I could share culture with, because it was so stifling. It was such a, I mean, I love Japanese culture, but it was something like that, the intimacy that you can develop with somebody who from a different kind of culture. So I would seek out these American people. One day I was walking down the street, and they were showing this movie about homelessness right there in the middle of Shinjuku, which, if you know, is like the busiest part of Tokyo. And I started just talking to this Australian guy, and he invited me over to this anarchist bookstore called the Irregular Rhythm Asylum in the middle of Shinjuku. So the first time I went, I couldn't find it. And the second time, I found this little flag that shows you where it is, and you go up this staircase that winds around. In Japanese, it's always like catacombs, and it's this little store, and it was just this amazing multilingual space. And I met people from Malay, I met people from Spain, I met people from Greece and Sweden that were there, and were just drawn together to this place by, one, their radical politics, and two, their ability to speak English. And you'd see here, like, they had all these books by people like Chomsky and Berkman, all this like radical literature, and they would have like Egyptian radical hip hop blasting in the background, and they'd have like flyers on the walls for anti-nuclear demonstrations. And I got to know this whole community of people who I wouldn't have gotten to know if I didn't feel the urge to connect with people who shared my the language I was most familiar with. in this foreign culture. And there were Japanese people too. I met this man, Toyo, who I used to give Japanese English lessons to, but they really ended up me just talking to him in Japanese because he couldn't understand what I was saying in English. And we used to go to colleges and share that. And I remember really vividly him telling me about him getting laid off from his job as a designer, because as a person who designs posters, because even in Japan, they've been hit very hard by the recession, especially with the earthquake on top of that. And he asked me how to say, お金が一番大事なものじゃないです in English. And I told him that you'd say, money is not the most important thing. And I wrote it out for him. And recently I found that notebook again. I read that to myself and I said, that's really true. And there is something more important than that. Thanks.